Today, Ancient Explorers, we are going to step back in time and into the Palaeolithic, and there we will meet an ancient mythological creature called, today, the Lion Man. We will look at how Paleolithic people represented this creature, and also what it tells us about their relationship with an ancient cat. Later in this video, I will invite you to create a visual story about the Lion Man, inspired by Paleolithic art. To help you navigate this creative adventure, there are timestamps in the description box below. I have also included in the description box a list of sources that I consulted when making this video. I highly recommend that if you're interested in this topic, that you go ahead and consult them too. Our adventure begins at Hollensteinstadel Cave, located northwest of Ulm in southern Germany. Made of limestone and secluded, the cave is located in Holstein Cliff in the southern part of Lanetto Valley. The cave has a long history of scientific investigation, and it was here that Lion Man was found. Geologist and paleontologist Oskar Fraß first excavated the cave in 1861. At that time, he was searching for evidence of ancient bears. Then Robert Wetzel, a prehistoric historian, carried out excavations between 1935 and 1936. Geologist Otto Volsing continued the excavations between 1937 and 1939 under Wetzel's direction. The excavation was suspended when the Second World War broke out. But as luck would have it, on the dig's last day, Volsing found many broken ivory fragments towards the back of the cave in a small chamber. The finds were not well studied at the time. After the World War ended, between 1956 and 1961, Wetzel continued his investigation of the cave. Upon his death in 1962, the excavation finds were donated to the museum at Ulm. Then, 7 years later, prehistorian Joachim Hahn began an inventory of the finds from the cave. He came across fragments of a figurine, and with help of two colleagues, they pieced it together. This was no easy task, and much like piecing together a great puzzle with very small pieces. Once he and his colleagues had glued around 200 pieces together, Hahn realized that the figurine represented a therianthrope. A therianthrope is a mythological being that is part human, part animal. Centaurs from classical mythology are an example. They were beings who were part human, part horse. While Hahn could easily tell that the figurine had a human body, he was not sure if its head was that of a bear or a cat. At this point, the figurine was missing sections on its right side and also on its back. Almost miraculously, some missing pieces were found during very recent digs inside the cave. When some additional pieces were glued to the figurine, it became clear that the figurine's head was that of a lion. Meanwhile, the creature also had shoulder blades, like a human, and paws, like a cat. The figurine is 31.1 centimeters high and made from the tusk of a woolly mammoth. It is at least 30,000 years old. Researchers were able to give the figurine this date because soil from the floor in which it was found was radiocarbon dated. This means that the figurine dates back to the Paleolithic period and links to a cultural stage that archaeologists called Aurignacian. This stage started around 40,000 years ago and lasted until about 26,000 years ago. During this time, early modern humans had migrated to Europe from Africa through the Near East. They developed and used a range of tools made from a range of materials, including antler bone and stone. Meanwhile, they also engraved and painted art in caves, made musical instruments such as flutes, and figurines that represented people and mammals. When researchers looked closely at the lineman figurine, they identified that it had been carved using a flint knife from the right tusk of a woolly mammoth. This would have been a challenging and time-consuming activity. And although the figurine is called lineman, it is not entirely clear whether the figurine represents a man or a woman. Scholars have examined the figurine closely, and there are features that suggest that it could be either. It is also not clear what the figurine was used for. However, there are some important clues. In their scientific article, researcher Klaus Joachim Kine and his colleagues suggest that the lineman was deliberately broken and placed inside the cave sometime during the Paleolithic. Over time, with the figurine fragments, around 300 lithic or stone fragments have been recovered. This total amount is actually quite small when compared to other Paleolithic places, especially those where archaeologists believe people prepared food, made stone tools, and even slept. Following this train of logic, Kind and his colleagues think that the chamber where the figurine was found might have been a special place, and perhaps during the figurine's lifetime, it was used in ceremonies. We may even uncover additional clues if we think about how figurines have been used throughout time, particularly in Northern Europe and Asia. For example, even today, some cultural groups in Siberia continue to make and use human-like and animal-like figurines in special practices and ceremonies. In the description box below, I have added a link to the Smithsonian Institute. If you click on the link, you will see in an example a wooden figurine from Siberia. Figurines are commonly used by shamans. Shamans can be thought of as tribal healers who possess the ability to communicate with spirits. For their community, shamans can perform ceremonies that help with a range of tasks, such as hunting and herding. They may also predict the future and help people when they are ill. The lineman figurine's cat-like features can be linked to an ancient cat known as the Eurasian lion or the cave lion. The lion features in other types of Paleolithic art. Take a look for a moment at this example, ancient explorers. This is a photograph of the walls inside of the Panthera cave located in France. As you can see, The drawings made in charcoal are of various mammals. Look closely. Can you spot the lions? This painting tells us a story. I can see lions and bears in a group, and they seem to be chasing the bison. Right at the bottom, the large animal looks to me as if it is a woolly mammoth. What do you think? Share with me your thoughts in the comments below. The cave lion's scientific name is Panthera spelaea. The cave lion shared a common ancestor with the modern lion around 500,000 years ago. The cat's closest relative is thought to be Panthera atrox, also commonly known as the North American lion. This North American big cat is not to be confused with the puma. Just like the woolly mammoth, both the cave lion and the North American lion are now extinct. It is currently thought that cave lion populations were dispersed across western Eurasia and Northwest America, living in the cold and dry grasslands, also known as the Mammoth Steppe. Scientists think that the lion may have been a nocturnal hunter and stalked their prey in a similar way to other big cats, such as the jaguar. In more recent times, several fascinating and major discoveries have been made in Siberia, which provide us with rare insight into the nature of the cave lion. One such discovery was of 2 frozen cubs found in Yakutia. The cubs, called Dina and Yuan by scientists, were less than a week old when they died, possibly in a landslide that took place 25,000 years ago. Their fur is a smoky grey colour, and their tail is shorter than that of a modern lion cub. 2 more frozen cubs, known as Boris and Sparta, were found in 2017 and 2018, also in Yakutia. Both cubs were older and had golden brown fur, with darker fur behind their ears. The cave lion became extinct around 13,000 years ago, and it is not entirely clear what caused the cat to die out. There are still many questions to be answered about the cave lion, but perhaps for now what we can say is that the lion man figurine and other forms of Paleolithic art suggest that early modern humans had a special relationship with the animal. They may have feared but respected the cat for their strength, agility, and aptitude for hunting. Now, using the information that we have learnt about the cave lion and Paleolithic culture, we will roam our imaginations and create a story featuring the Lion Man. For my visual story, I'm going to create a watercolour and charcoal picture. On the screen, you can see that I have watercolour paper, watercolour paint, a couple of round-tip paintbrushes, and a charcoal pencil. The pencil that I'll be using is a Staedtler 6B Mars Lumograph Aquarelle. Just like watercolour pencils, this one can be activated with water. The watercolour paper I'll be painting on is 300 GSM and is heavy weighted. This paper is medium cold press and has a rough texture, which I think will work well for the picture I'm going to create. With an old paintbrush, I am applying clean water and activating my watercolour paint. The specific names of the colours are in the description box below. As you can also see, I have 2 jars of water. One of the jars is for cleaning my paintbrush. It is especially important to clean your brush when working with multiple colours. You need to make sure that the brush and water are clean when activating paint to avoid making the colours muddy. Once I've activated the paint, I then apply a light layer to the paper. As you can see, the application isn't even. In fact, I'm applying more paint towards the edges of the paper, while leaving its centre more or less white. This is because I'm trying to create a cave-like background. While the page is still wet, I'm adding a little bit of salt to create a little bit more interest. Once I've added the salt, I put the page aside to completely dry. Now it is time to choose the characters that I'm going to include in my visual story. Of course, my main character is going to be Lion Man, and after looking at various examples of Paleolithic cave art, I've decided to include in the scene the woolly mammoth and also the cave lion. Before drawing the characters on my final illustration, I've decided to spend some time getting to know them with my pencil. The representations of these animals are quite realistic in Paleolithic art. This means that Paleolithic artisans must have made keen observations of the animals. Inspired by their depictions, I've drawn basic contours of lion men and the mammals. By tracing my contour drawings and then sketching the animals and lion men multiple times, I'm hoping to build up memory of them in my hands. By following this process, I will also feel more confident when I later draw them on my watercolour paper. At times, it can feel intimidating to try and draw something more realistically. So taking our time, practicing and observing our subject can really help. I invite you to choose whichever Paleolithic characters you find interesting and draw them. I have made my practice sheets available on my website if you would like to learn to draw cave lion, lion man, and the woolly mammoth, just like me. Now that my paper is dry, I'm going to draw first the lion man. Beforehand, I thought about where I wanted to place the character on the page. I decided that I would place Lion Man to one side of the scene, and this is because I'd like to create the impression that the character is talking to the mammals. I have my contour sketch close by so that I can refer to it as I'm sketching. At first, I sketched lightly with my pencil, but now that I'm happy with the initial sketch, I darken the lines. I finished the sketch of Lion Man by drawing an eye, nose, and mouth. Next, I'm going to draw the woolly mammoth. I've decided to draw him towards the center of the picture and position him so it looks as if he's talking to Lion Man. Just like the Lion Man, I'm starting by drawing the mammoth's head first. In a similar way, I focus on drawing the shapes that represent the various features of the animal. Inspired by the scene painted on the walls of the cave at Panthera in France, I've decided to draw a group of cave lions. In a similar way, I'm only going to draw the upper part and head of the cats, and I'm going to draw the cats quite close together. By drawing them this way, I hope to create the impression that they are moving. I've started first by drawing the cat closest to the mammoth. Inspired by the frozen cubs, I'm adding a layer of shading to the ears and head of the cave lion. I now move on to the next cat. I am drawing this one close to the first, but a little bit behind and above it. Now I move on to the third cat, and I've decided to draw this one almost in line with the first one, but below it. Finally, I'm adding the last cat, and this one is right at the back of the pride. As a finishing touch, I am now activating the charcoal by painting clean water with a paintbrush over the pencil lines. So there you go, ancient explorers. I've created a visual story featuring the linemen. It looks to me like they're having some kind of meeting. I wonder what they're talking about. And as always, ancient explorers, I love to see what you create. I invite you to connect with me. I've added all of my contact information in the description box below, including my social media links. I hope you've enjoyed this creative adventure, and I invite you to take another with me. The details of my other creative adventures can be found on my website. Take care and stay well, ancient explorers, and don't forget to have fun. Ciao.